Alright, Subaru Crosstrek time again. Alright, so it's the video you've all been waiting for. We're going to do some brakes today. So I got the fronts and the rears. I looked at the fronts during the last time I rotated the tires, and I was like, I think it's time. And I pulled them off here, and actually they're not as bad as I thought they were. There's actually a lot more on there. So I guess they're not as bad as I thought. Right now the car's got 74,000 miles on it. So that's what brake pads look like, well, at least on our car with 74,000 miles. And if we do a comparison here, and here's what the new ones look like. So yeah, there's definitely some wear, but it's definitely not even close to being out of pad yet. But I'm putting them on just because I drove the car the other day and I was like, wow, there's like no pedal here at all. The pedal goes to the floor, so I'm going to put these new ones on. Now I went with, I'm not going to say the cheapest pads. There's like a chunk missing out of this one. That's a sign of a good pad right there. You can see there's a little chunk missing. I went to O'Reilly's, and these are OE, and I believe they're ceramic. I think he said that's what they came with. Out the door for both these boxes was 110 bucks. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how they go. The backs I may not need at all. I don't know. Usually backs don't wear out, but I figured the fronts were down further than what they are, but they don't look bad. So yeah, I will. I'll show you how to do this here in a second. Alright, so these are the tools you're going to need, and I would say this is at most what you're going to need. You could probably get by without the torque wrench. You could probably get by without the C-clamp, and probably without the grease gun and a little screwdriver. So your bare minimum, I would say, you're going to need is a 19mm socket, 14mm socket, and then a 1/2 inch ratchet. The 19, that's going to get your lug nuts off, and then the 14 will let you take your bolts off to get the caliper off. So I'm not going to show you me taking the wheel off, so just save some time. We'll get right to the nitty-gritty with the caliper. There, you can kind of see it. And I'll turn the light on. I don't think that's actually gonna, you really don't need a light. So, backing these off, this is that extension. Top one you probably need an extension for. You could probably get by without, but there's a brake hose right in the way here. And I just kind of squeeze that on. Get your ratchet on. And then I'll try to do this in such a way that I'm not blocking the camera. Oops, I'm going the wrong way. There. They're not very tight at all. I don't know what the torque on it is, but I can tell you this, it's definitely not much. So you got two bolts that you're going to pull out here, and they're going to be kind of grayish in color. 1 and 2, no Loctite on them. And then I'll back this up a little bit. To get your caliper off with your pads, you're just going to take it, pull it that way. You might have to wiggle it back and forth. Here's your caliper. It's a little rust. You could tie it up. I just set it on top of the rotor like that. Pads are here. You're just going to kind of, you might want to notate what they look like and where the stuff is. Or you may not know how it goes back together. Or if you still have the other side back on, you can check that. And then your pads just slide out. They just slide out. You might have to work them a little bit if they're kind of crusty. And that's that part of the process. This would be the one that I looked at. This is the driver's side. Driver's side inside. So you can tell this is the worst one out of all the pads. So there's definitely some on there yet. We're not in any sort of trouble yet, but it's time. So, and I got the time today to do it because I'm not working, so we're gonna install these bad boys here in a second. Real quick here while I got you, on the top here and then on the bottom, these parts here, they need to slide. So what I like to do is put either a little grease on this part or in the little track that goes in the pad. Now when I say a little bit of grease, I mean just a little bit of grease. If you take your grease gun, just lay a big thick bead, chances are that grease is going to work its way either on the pad or on the rotor, and then you're going to have some braking issues. So just a very small just a small amount. And like I said, you could probably skip that step and you'd be just fine. Okay, so what we're looking at here is the caliper. So this caliper here is what they call twin pistons. There's two pistons here, so when you apply the brake, this piston pushes out, and then those brake pads squeeze against the rotor here. So if you're following along, you probably already know where I'm going with this. So we have these real super thin pads, so as you go, this piston works its way out and then it stays out. It doesn't come all the way back in because the pads are thinner. So as the life of the pad goes, that piston slowly expands. So what you need to do is get those pistons back in. Now, you can probably do it by hand if you don't have anything else, or run a piece of flat steel, or just be creative. And what you need to do is push that piston back in. The other thing is it's going to increase your brake fluid level as well, because you're pushing that brake fluid out. Usually if your brake fluid is low, it means your pads are probably worn out because the fluid is coming out with that piston. The other thing you can do too is sometimes pull these rubber boots back and put a little drop of oil in there so that these pistons don't seize. Sometimes in areas where you have salt and stuff like that, salt and snow, these things will freeze up and then they get stuck, and then you have a pad that hangs up and it gets real hot because it's dragging a little bit. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is here, in this case, I'm just going to use an old pad, and I'm going to just place that against those two pistons. And then if you can see this back here, there's a screw. That's just where I'm going to go off of, and I'm using a C-clamp to clamp that because it's just the quickest way of doing it. So you get that on there. You kind of want it somewhere in the center so that you're pushing evenly on both those pistons, and it goes pretty easy. You're not going to have to turn very hard on the C-clamp. You can see them go in. You can feel them. You just squeeze right in. I've seen guys do them with like those ratchet clamps or whatever that you can buy for woodworking. I've seen guys use those too. And all you're going to do is bottom them out. And like I said, that's just saving you some time when you try to put the pads on. You're not fighting with those pistons that are out. You can probably get those back in by hand, but it's just easier to use a C-clamp. Alright, so I didn't show you this step, but I just put some grease on those points that slide. Depending on the type of brake pads you buy too, if you buy maybe some more expensive types, they may actually come with replacement parts here. They're usually stainless steel. I think they're called guides. They may come with new guides, but if you buy cheap pads like I do, because your wife is hard on brakes, you're just going to go with whatever you get. So this tab here, I just pulled that up. I'll be honest, I don't know what that was for. I thought that was a wear indicator, but it obviously is not. And what I'm doing here is just kind of putting the top in first, pushing up a little bit, and then the bottom. Can you see that? Yeah, and then the bottom just slides in. You can just push that in. If you want, at this point, it would be a good idea to make sure that the pad doesn't get hung up, because that's what that pad is supposed to do. It's supposed to be loose in there. Maybe not loose, but it needs to move freely so that it doesn't get hung up against the rotor train. And then you're going to do the same thing with the backside. The backside is exactly the same. It's just hard to see, so sometimes it's kind of a trick to get it in there. I got no good way of showing you that, so you can kind of fiddle-faddle around with that, but like I said, it's the same thing. You're just putting it on the backside like this, and you got a guide here on the bottom, guide on the top, and I just pull this up so it's out of the way. Alright, so if you're struggling getting that back pad in, here's the trick to get it in. If I can find my demonstrator here. Alright, so when you're well, whatever, that's the front, but I'm just using this one as the back. So this pad here, when you're putting it in, you're going to struggle with it. What you want to do is set the pad like this in, and then rotate it against. It'll slide right in like butter. If you're trying to push it straight on, you're going to be fighting with the sides of these clips here. And if you try to put one side in the bottom and then sneak the top in, it just doesn't work. So your best bet is start the edge like this, so you're bringing it in at this angle, down, and then it just falls right in like I said, warm butter. It's pretty easy. What do we got left here? Alright, so now we're to a point where you can put the caliper back on. And remember, we push that piston back. Usually, like I said, I put some oil on that, but I'm kind of in a rush today, so let's see if we do this right here. There it is. So it'll actually it'll fit on there real nice because we push those pistons all the way back in. So and then I just like to get them started, make sure that they're good to go. Do this bottom one here. Okay. And if you didn't do that, like I said, what you could do too, if you didn't put those pistons in, you could put the caliper, kind of flip it back like this, pull on the caliper to push those pistons in, and then kind of work it over. But like I said, the easiest way to do that is just get yourself a C-clamp. They're not that expensive. This whole setup here with tools is pretty cheap. So right now I'm going to tighten these down. There's probably a torque spec, but like I said, it's not much. It's probably in inch-pounds. Alright, so the other thing, you just kind of want to check that your caliper's not hung up at all, because that should move freely too. The only thing that doesn't move is this bracket. The caliper and pads, that floats kind of with your rotor then, so that it doesn't get hung up. In some cases too, you may want to replace your rotor. Then you would take that bracket off, and this would just slide right off the front. I'm not going to do that because these rotors don't look bad, and I was trying to do this on the cheap side without spending a ton of money on parts. So yeah, so that's where we're at with this. I'm going to throw the wheel back on, and then we'll see what we're going to do. Alright, so we're in the rear of the vehicle here, and again, this is a 2014 Subaru Crosstrek. You just saw me doing the front brakes there. So I thought, I didn't know if I was going to do the rears, you know, because actually the rear brakes on this thing was more expensive than the fronts, which I thought was odd. Although I guess the guy at O'Reilly's could have been smoking crack for all I know. So I pulled the pads out. Here's the pad. Don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that's not the right one. I looked at this thing and I was like, holy man, I'm like, this is a serious brake pad for being in the rear of the car. Like, okay, so I don't even know where to go from here. So I'll tell you what we're gonna do. We're gonna pull off the back caliper and we're gonna check it. I'm willing to bet that's a single piston. I wouldn't think that would be a dual piston in the rear. In most cases, 60% of the braking, or even 70%, happens in the front of the car, so those brakes usually wear out quicker. As a rule of thumb, I usually thought the rear brakes on a disc you could get 100,000 miles out of before you even had to look at them. So yeah, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to pull the backs off here and check them. Alright, so I got them off. I got the caliper off. So like I said, this one's only got one piston. That's usually the way it works with rear brakes. Not always though, depending on the car. The actual pads, I'll bring you around here. They don't look bad. It's hard to say. It looks like there's a decent amount on there yet, but I have nothing to compare to. The inside one there though looks pretty thin. I'm thinking if they're anywhere near what the front pads were for thickness, these are probably time to change. But like I said, for some odd reason, and I double checked the slip, it's for a 2014 XV Crosstrek, and it's this is the premium, not the limited, because the limited is the better. This is the premium. Yep, why don't we blow one more time? There you go. I don't understand the logic of blowing that horn as much as they do. Anyway, so I don't know. I don't have parts. Maybe we'll do a test ride, just check the front and see how it feels. Alright, so I verified with O'Reilly's that this is the part number they gave me again for the rear of the rear brakes on this Crosstrek. I told them that's not right. That or the pads inside this box were taken out of a different box and put in, but I said that's not what I have on there. Oh, they're made in the United States. Well, that's good. The other thing is I did have an instance with my Nissan Xterra where there's something with manual transmission and automatic transmission changes that. So maybe he has it in as a manual and doesn't know that, and this car is an automatic, and maybe that has something to do with the brake pads? Question mark? I'm not sure. Alright, we're back. Long story long, the Brake Best by O'Reilly's, the box they gave me was the wrong part. They had the right part number, but the guy must have been dyslexic and grabbed the wrong box. So when I called to ask if they had my part I needed in stock, he said no because it was checked out. But actually, he didn't check the shelf. It was still there because the box that they had checked out with the right part number, or the box they checked out with the wrong part number was the box I had. But the right number was checked out of their system, so it was showing in their inventory they didn't have it, even though they did have it, and I had the wrong part number. So anyway, this is the size box it should have been, because those pads are this small. So instead of me making another trip after I went to a different O'Reilly, because they didn't have them in stock at the one I bought it from, even though they did, he called the store and verified, and that's how I found out I had the wrong part number. He's like, they gave you the wrong part. So instead of me wasting more time running back to the other store because it was in a different location, I just went to Advance, told them what I needed, and this is what they gave me. So, back pads. It was definitely time. So maybe this is what I saw. I knew at some point pads needed to be replaced, and I didn't know if it was front or back that I checked. I thought maybe I checked both, but obviously I wasn't going to change just the back. I was going to do the fronts as well. So yeah, this is the worst one here in the back. That one does not have much, so that is going to be a different pedal feel once those are installed. So let's get to it here. Let's get cracking. If you want some part numbers, these are ceramic. These are made in India. Interesting. So part number is going to be PXD 1114H. So that's for the rear, and it comes with stainless hardware as well. So those are those little guides that we didn't replace in the front because it didn't come with them. We greased them. These come with new slides, and it comes with some grease right here. It says CarQuest organic grease. So well, let's get these installed. Alright, so back, similar to front, you're going to use your ratchet again with your 14, so that's easy enough to do. Make sure you got it going the right way so you can actually spin it off, and they're not very tight like you said. The process is basically the same as the fronts. There's a little hitch to it though. So we're going to just set the caliper on the side just like that. I'm going to use a flat blade screwdriver. You may want to add that into your list and just kind of wedge that between the pad and the rotor and carefully pry it out, because this one's really full of dust. You see this one too, or maybe you can't see it, but this should be open here. There shouldn't be all that crust in there. Same thing with the back pad, and just carefully wedge it and then slide it out. Ooh, that's tight. The reason it's tight, it's brake dust in that groove, and it causes these not to slide, so maybe they were hung up a little bit, and that's why they wore down too. So now we get to a point where we need to pull these metal clips off, and you can't really see them, they're kind of rusty. So all you do with that is just kind of get your screwdriver underneath the bottom part here where the pad is, and you just pop it up. It's just a friction fit, and it should pop out just like that. So the new ones, we can do a comparison here. So this is the old one, what the old one looks like. This is the new one. Like I said, you probably could reuse these. Probably want to make sure that's somewhat clean too, so that it sits in there flat. You might want to just scrape it just a little bit. Like I said, these are really full of brake dust. I don't know why, but they are. So, and then putting it in the way I did it, you get it kind of close, and then you just push this back part down, and that kind of just gets in there then, and kind of snaps in, and then that's it. That's how the bottom looks. So that's one, and then top one, kind of same thing again. I go where the slot is for where the pad sits in, get my screwdriver in there, and then just basically pry that out. There's your top one. There's nothing that has to be up or down. They're both the same, so you don't have to worry about having it in the wrong spot or anything like that. And when I install this, I kind of do the same thing again. Push on the side that doesn't have the little tab. Put that in there, and then push the other one up. The other thing you might want to have is a creeper. I'm going to grab that now just to push this back one in. It's easier to lay on a creeper underneath here, look up and push that in. So might be something you want to add to your list. There we go. Alright, so that organic grease, all I'm doing is just putting a little bit of that on a screwdriver. If I can get it to come out here. There you go. And I'm just putting that where that is going to slide. Actually, I don't think I need it up there as much. But you want to put, like I said, these need to slide in there, because if they don't, make it against the brake rotor, you're just gonna wear your pad out and have a worn out pad, or you may end up with a warped rotor if you get a lot of heat. So, and the reason they make these stainless is the idea, I guess, is so they don't rust. Because obviously, if they rust up, they're not going to move. So, yeah. Alright. So that's what that looks like. Now, putting the pads in again, it's kind of the same thing as last time. Let's see if I can do this. Front one's the easy one. It's the back that's a little bit of a trick here. Let's see. How do I do this? Yeah, so you're going to want to do that same thing, like I said, in the front. You kind of push it in like this and bring it in from the side, and then you kind of just slide it in there. They're definitely, they definitely fit firm. I think I just popped that one out. Yeah. Let's get that back in there. So again, same way. I like to push it tight against the rotor, so you get the caliper or whatever to fit. Oops. And this is where I said the creeper probably is going to come in handy, because it's just easier not to have to lay in a bunch of dirt doing this. Same type of thing though, you're going to rotate it, kind of push it in towards pushing it towards the front of the vehicle, and then you kind of rotate it in, and then you get it in like that. So I suppose I could show you what it looks like. I don't think I did that in other videos. Or in the front. So that's what it looks like when it's in there. It's hard to see. So the one thing we haven't done yet is with the caliper. Again, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to get the piston ran all the way back in. I'm just going to use my C-clamp with that. I'm not going to show you that this time. Same thing, I just used an old pad, put it on here, squished it in, and you're going to slide it over. Alright, I just took it for a test drive, and yeah, that made a huge difference. A lot more pedal feel. Same thing, when I first started, pumped the pedal. I think I pumped it 3 times before I had normal pedal feel, and then once I did stop, it was like brand new brakes again, like a brand new car. It felt completely different. One thing to note, there's these wear indicators here, and it's supposed to start squealing once the pad gets low. I did not see the new ones that I ordered. I didn't see that I had 2 pads like this. I thought there was only 1. I may have inadvertently put both pads on the same, the wear indicators on the same rotor. I think you're supposed to put, you should have one on each side, on your passenger side and driver's side in the rear. So I may end up taking it off, so just know that you put them on. Double check your parts too. I was kind of in a rush to get them on here. I wanted to get this done yet tonight because I got other stuff I got going and I got to put away yet tonight. But just check that, and yeah, these definitely there was not much life left on these yet. So that's what that looks like. All right, so there it is, your 2014 Subaru XV Crosstrek New brake pad install, front and rear. Project complete.